Hello, everyone. Mars moves retrograde in Leo on the 6th of December at 6 degrees Leo. On the 2nd or so of January, Mars will move into an opposition with Pluto for the second time. This will happen at 1 degree Leo and Aquarius. So here's a little overview, and forgive me for I'm pretty nasally today, so I'm congested. Here's an overview of this Mars energy. I shared an introduction to this, so check out that video as well. What I want to do is just drop in very deeply to what the essence of Mars is all about. As we're all right now on the cusp of this retrograde energy, the vibe of Mars retrograde really is something is turning. I always think of it as we're entering into a ceremony space, and we can really palpably feel that. If we're sensitive to it, we can sense there's a changing of direction happening with this Mars retrograde. It's interesting, it's also trining Mercury retrograde, so it's a very retrograde season for us in general right now. Let's connect with what Mars is really all about. What's so important about tracking Mars in general? The more I review these teachings, the more I kind of reconnect with it in a new way, the deeper and more relevant it becomes. Because what I want to express here is just simply we're all on a path. And that reality, the truth of it, is actually eminent and real for each one of us. The fact of being on a path. And this path is a one foot after another, the choices that we're making, the direction that we're choosing to go. And it's very true for all of us that throughout this life journey, we're experimenting with different approaches, trying this path out. Let me try doing this. Let me try eating this. Let me try this approach to relationships. Let me try this approach to practice and sadhana. Everything in our life can be understood as I'm exploring and discovering who I am, what I want, where I want to go, and how I want to get there through all these actions that we're choosing to cultivate. And you can't avoid it. You can't bypass that learning curve, that journey that happens with Mars. And thus, from that perspective, on an absolute level, from the perspective of this being a learning journey, we can't superficially judge one path over another. I was listening to this talk from Ram Dass this morning, where he was talking about having been a vegetarian for 6 years, and that being a path that he was designated and chosen. And then realizing it was getting to his head. It was kind of like an ego. I've been a vegetarian for this many years. And he realized he needed to break that. And he made the decision, I'm going to break that and sort of push up against this whole ego structure of I'm a vegetarian, I'm eating a pure diet. How many years have you been doing that? And he went to a Chinese restaurant and ordered, something that was non-kosher because he's Jewish, that he knew wouldn't be good for the Jewish part and for the Hindu part. So, he ate meat. And he did his blessing. He gave it to his guru as his practice was. So he wasn't just recklessly indulging. He was staying with his practice, right? Which is another dimension of his path, which is to orient everything in his life to the holy. Right? To give everything, every action over, to surrender every action over, right? So he's not generating guilt. He's sanctifying this, but he's also choosing to eat meat. And that was, from a Mars perspective, a very beautiful example. Because I think what happens often with Mars is we go to extremes. Especially if we're sort of indoctrinated by a lot of spiritualizations and ideas and attempts to be pure in action. Like, I don't want to hurt anyone or anything or do anything harmful or make the wrong choices. Often there's a lot of suppression. You can kind of think about this relative to the square natally or naturally between Aries and Capricorn, right? You end up suppressing Capricorn, kind of holding back. That's bad, that's shameful, I can't do that. So we have a lot of unresolved desire, and then we need to do something with that unresolved desire. And so there's something about embracing our path, being very open-minded for what it is, but noticing where we might go into these extremes. And so if we're going into these extremes, it can be like a reckless, just going to go and eat meat or sleep with whoever I want to sleep with, and do whatever I want to do, and I don't care the effects that it has on other people. That doesn't imply a lot of self-awareness. We're going to learn from it, but there isn't in that an agency of choice. So this is the first dimension that I'm wanting to bring forward. It's not so much about the path itself, the actual actions that we're choosing to take, but the spirit of agency and purpose and presence with which we bring ourselves to it. For Ram Dass to be sharing the story and for him to be giving this food over, sharing it with his guru, it's such a beautiful teaching, right? Because what else are you going to do? I shouldn't be eating it. This is wrong. This is bad. But I'm going to do it anyway. You're generating the karma that's kind of coming from that guilt. You're not going to be creating an easy path for yourself. So he's doing this, and there's this man watching him. After he finishes eating, this man talks to him. And he says, I'm a Christian preacher, and, I've been preaching, but really I don't feel like I've been authentic. I've been preaching and trying to, convert these young women, but just so I can get with them. And I feel like I've been a liar and I haven't really been living my truth. And I was watching your devotion and how you were blessing and working with this food. And, when you're eating, he didn't see what he was eating, though. He just saw his energy, right? How he was with the food. And he said, can I ask you, what is your diet like? And that's as far as I got with the talk. And I just love, and I think that's as far as he got too. I love that was what he brought forward, right? This man was bringing forward, I'm doing these actions. I'm bringing myself forward. I'm a leader of the spiritual path, but really I'm not really pure in my motivations. I have some other motive involved. And he sees Ram Dass and wow, this guy's so pure. Tell me, what is your diet? I mean, there are two things that I want to say to that. We look towards other people. And this is a very common Leo thing. Actually, Ram Dass had Mars in Leo. It's a very common Leonian thing to look towards other people that emulate these qualities that we respect, that we want to embody. And to be I want to be I want to be pure, I want to be holy, I want to be good, I want to be kind, I want to be as strong and noble and righteous as this person. How do they eat? Right? How do they act? What is their spiritual practice? And we can forego our own agency and the truth and the individuality of our path by trying to associate and, adopt the path of someone else. And for Ram Dass to say, well, actually, I just had meat. I don't know what he answered to that person. But the beautiful teaching, and I believe that whole situation was just orchestrated by divine grace, right? That's the teaching. I've had this in my own life many times in many different ways. Just where the attempts towards purity or following a particular path that I wanted to be, that maybe was emulated by other role models and leaders, is sort of broken, but in the breaking of that is actually where God emerges. So there's a very, very important teaching with Mars. And this is something that I think we should all be able to relate to, because the nature of the soul path is never going to be homogenous. It's never going to be, there's one way for you to be, and this is how it's going to happen all the time. I think there's a homogeneity to truth. And there's sort of a Neptunian dimension of the truth is true, and the principle of love and truth is something to practice and bring into every part of our life, and that's the journey. But the actions that we take, and it's funny because in that same talk, he mentioned the Bhagavad Gita and the story of Arjuna being with Krishna. And the story with Arjuna is he has this realization that this team that he was supposed to fight and kill are, these beloved people, teachers, uncles, people that are not bad. Why should I fight them and kill them? And Krishna says, it's your duty to do so. You have to do it. And what's interesting is, just yesterday I opened up the Bhagavad Gita, which I've never actually done. I didn't even know I had it. It's like one of the small books in my bathroom. I'm like, what's this book? And I read that. And then he's talking about it. I'm like, this is all really relevant for this Mars retrograde. We have to walk the walk. We have to follow the path that we need to follow. But the distinction is we're not concerned with outcome. And we're not fueled, we're not motivated by the hunger of anger and lust and pride. We're not trying to win. We can have the goal. Obviously, if you're fighting in a battle, your goal is to win, right? You're not attached to it. Your ego isn't all bound up in the identity of I need to win, but you're going to be full and you're going to do it completely. And I think this is such an important distinction and learning for this Mars archetype. So one thing that happens as Mars moves retrograde is we, one, become more reflective on what is our path, what do we need to move forward into, what choices do we need to be making right now. And one important distinction with Mars in Leo is we need to notice where we might be trying to, it's like Leo can emulate these heroes and these famous people, but what is your path towards greatness? What is your path towards actualizing your deepest potential? And we sometimes need to be willing to do things that we've otherwise judged as, well, that's too egoic, or that's too much energy. I don't want to put myself in there too much. Whether it's our diet or whether it's promoting ourselves. I was just working with someone recently, and it's not an uncommon situation. I think because I'm learning this, I attract this. It's a part of our shared journey. A deeply spiritual soul, a spiritual teacher for many years. And the theme of the whole session was, I think this might be about, you just got to promote yourself, like put yourself out there more. And I find myself often going there, and different for each individual. Sometimes like the missing piece is like I'm surrendered, I'm trusting, I'm cultivating that integrity. But the missing piece is the self-entitlement to actually claim our own life and say, I'm going to do this. And we think that if we're going to do something, if we're going to will for something, if we're going to go for a result, that somehow we're generating more negative karma, that we're putting more ego, more desire, more will, and getting in the way, creating more messiness. And yet sometimes these actions are the quickest way through, without which we're going to be suppressing and not accessing a deeper agency and power that actually needs to be integrated in our awakening. And again, the key is, how do we act? How do we behave? How upset do we become when things don't work out? Right? When the fruits of our efforts don't fall the way we wanted them to. Or on the opposite end, and this is really more of an issue, I think, how do we behave when it does work out? When we become very popular, very famous, we make a lot of money, when things open up and our actions actually are very fruitful, do we still find ourselves to be humble and open and sincere? Or do we become sort of closed and tight and fixated on how good that feels to be winning, to be getting something more? I think many of us are actually more afraid of that than not winning. In fact, on the spiritual journey, more often than not, we're just like more comfortable with failure because we don't have to deal with our own elation, our own ego. But we can't avoid it. And that's a big part of this Mars retrograde journey. The other dimension of it, of course, if there is something that needs to be, you're trying so hard, and Mars retrograde is, nope, you can't go there. It's not going to happen. As much as you want to make it happen, it's not going to happen. I've often quoted Ramana Maharshi, right? That which is meant to happen will, that which will not. Try as hard as you want to try to make it otherwise. It's just what's meant to be will be, what isn't will not. And that there's a sort of fated dimension to that. Like life has its own rhythm and intelligence, and you're never going to be able to be smarter and outsmart life, the Tao, the algorithm itself, right? In many ways, that's like that greater objectivity that this Pluto and Aquarius is teaching. So for some of us, there might be a dimension of you can't go there. But the thing is still, how do we interpret and internalize those blocks, right? Do we become angry and prideful and sort of victimized? Do we think we need to fight harder or push harder, or do we give up entirely? The presence of being engaged, available, willing, and ready to start again, to be humble and say, okay, here I am now. What now? And there's a lot of wisdom in the energy of retreat. And I'm seeing this a lot right now, right? You may have a lot of ambition. Mars slowing down might be a little bit of a pause for many of us. Okay, slow down. Things aren't working that way. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean you're not supposed to succeed or go there. It means pause, because you are a co-creator. And what we're learning with Leo, the higher dimension of Leo, and this can be understood via the Leo in conjunct to Neptune, or to Pisces, is that our unique creative imprint and expression and purpose in this world is itself a mirror, a reflection of divine creation working through us, with us, as us. So we create in that same agency and love and generosity that reflects the same love and generosity of Creator itself. And we know ourselves as one and connected to this divine source through our own creations. And our creations want to be powerful, want to be beautiful, they want to have an impact. And our actions want to open up the doors to new experience. It wants to further our own evolutionary growth. And sometimes we need to step back and slow down and be like, okay, either I'm used to smallness, I'm used to littleness, and I'm blocking the greatness of my being, of my soul. And if I keep on trying, I'm going to miss the point. Or I have too many ideas and concepts and projections that I see other people living that I'm trying to be, but it's not me. So there's a lot of wisdom and value in being able to just kind of engage and slow down and allow ourselves to get inspired and maybe to undo many of the ideas of what our path is, so we can be truly humble enough to be courageous enough to walk the path that actually wants to be walked at this time. Couple announcements. As always, I am available for one-on-one sessions for individuals, couples, and long-term soul-to-soul companionship sessions, which are bulk discounted sessions for those that want to work with me long-term. I have many classes, class series, including the current Planet Square and the Node series, which you can jump into now. You can also purchase individual classes in that series. And my full year training program, this is a training program that you can join anytime as a self-study. And I start a new cohort every year in March. I'm going to be opening enrollment for that in about a month. So you can check all of that in the description below. I also will often write articles in tandem to these videos. Check that out as well below. All right, thank you for watching.